Our guest this week is Monica Bermudez. She is an intuitive quantum energy healer, a light language channeler, and a Lumerian high priestess. Monica is a motivational and inspiring speaker, uplifting and releases her audiences from their heartbreak to feeling increased clarity, confidence, love, and joy. She is a #1 international best-selling co-author of the book Creating Your Legacy. After experiencing a heartbreaking, emotionally draining, and painful divorce, Monica started to really dig deep within her soul to make transformational shifts in her ancestral and karmic patterns. A miraculous breakthrough took place when Monica unexpectedly began channeling light language, which created a quantum energetic shift for profound emotional and spiritual healing. Hello, Monica. I'm so glad you joined me.
I am just so ecstatic to be here with you, David. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yes, I'm so glad. I know it's the second time that we're doing this, and I'll explain to you guys later about why we're doing this over again. But I had a little problem with the record button. But what I wanted when we met each other, we first I met you when we are both members of Aramark, the ancient and mystical order Rose Crucis. And during one of those gatherings, we met, and I think at some point we exchanged phone numbers or email addresses for some reason. And we always have stayed in contact over the years. And this podcast, and even you doing your spiritual work, has allowed us to today have this conversation and hopefully many more conversations in the future.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to that. And I feel like, from this conversation that we're going to have in this, podcast show will lead into other like areas of discussions in the future for your show.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I want to educate our listeners on what exactly is an intuitive quantum healer.
Intuitive being our own inner connection with our higher self. Quantum, being that getting to the root cause at a very accelerated level and going through the layers of healing using energy specific unique codes,
Hmm.
which I use through light language. And I use my intuitive tool, spiritual tool to explain and mentor what is happening with the energy that the person is receiving through those light codes. So that's
Hmm.
why I'm an intuitive quantum energy healer. So,
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that I talked about in the intro was about light language and how you channel that light language is an intricate part of being an intuitive quantum healer.
yes, it's a big part of the work that I do with what I'm being called to do for others, and the clients that I have, right now, which I now call my initiates.
Hmm.
And, they've been experiencing some very deep, transformational, spiritual, alchemical, magical experiences. And they just don't have any words for it, because it's really just like they surrender to the energy, to what is. The energy just does its work. And
Hmm.
some of my clients have called it energy spa. That's a term that
Yeah.
they've used.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because I'm assuming that when your initiates are working with you, they're working through maybe some trauma, some drama, some past hurts, some karmic difficulties, and through your channeling, through your basically quantum healing, you are offsetting that, giving them information that's being, coming through a higher source, maybe even through them. I'm assuming
Yes,
that's what.
yes, that's exactly right. And I'm really more of a catalyst and a facilitator because, and what I tell them, what I tell my initiates is that this power and all that they already have is already inside of them. And so all I'm doing is just really facilitating and just shuffling that energy and spiritually alchemizing it and activating certain DNAs and aspects that they already have, and having them see for themselves and feel it for themselves, what they're experiencing. So this is, their own experience that they're having. So they're connected again to themselves, connected to their higher self, in other words. So it's helping them to remember, reconnect, and revive and renew themselves in all aspects, and that's really what I've been doing with the work. And a lot of it is also a very my strongest ability is to work with the chakras and the human grid system.
Yeah, I
And
love
so
it. I
that's what I've
love
been doing.
the comments about the chakras. I mean
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and we need to have a conversation on the chakras,
yes,
the dark night of the soul. All those are amazing
I know.
conversations that
Put
we
that
definitely.
on the list of topics to talk about
Yes,
next.
yes. Because I'm telling you, we can go really deep in this, and it's all about
Yes,
healing. It's definitely all about healing, and Monica definitely is a person who is, like she said, a catalyst for that healing. And we're going to get into all that. We're going to get into, how are you a catalyst, and how do you channel, and the dark night of the soul. So we're going to get into all these wonderful topics during this episode. So
yes.
it's going to be definitely a treat. What is light language, and how do you channel light language? Let's begin there.
So light language is energy codes, and it's all pure sound vibration, and it's a language that comes from the different stars in the solar systems. The person who channels light language is very unique to them and to their own frequency of their own soul. So, it's whatever is coming up for them that is unique for them. How it gets channeled is something that just gets activated in someone. It's already part of our DNA. If that is your soul calling, let's just say your soul contract to speak it. Now, there are some people that actually do write it. And also, aside from just speaking it is one thing, right? But some people write it, and other people just know how to read it and know what it's saying. I know, like, when I channel my light language, many people have asked me, what am I saying? And it's not really that, saying anything. It's just more of just the feeling of it's activating and transmuting and shifting, other aspects of your DNA. So like activating portions of your DNA that have been dormant for eons, And so it's a very spiritual, alchemical type, magical type of energy code. So it's going at a very quantum level in the quantum field of our energies. So
And
that's
there's a book that I read about the quantum field. Um, I've got the guy's name who wrote the book, The Quantum Field, but he's a scientist, and what he does is he takes science and he takes these spiritual fundamentals and concepts and sort of talk about them in a aspect of sort of putting them together, and so when you say quantum, is you're meaning basically like at the root, at the core, quantum means the very essence, breaking things down to the very basic molecules.
Yes, yes. And I love that you said at the root, because that's how my light language works. It breaks through all the layers of patterns and it gets right to the root of when it all started, when that pattern started. And so that's where the magic happens in the spiritual alchemy. And that's the way a lot of people who I work with have described it. They're just amazed by the work of it and the outcome and the results that I see, and the people who have been working with me.
And Greg Braden is the guy who wrote that book about the quantum field, and so to talk about, and I have to say we were having this wonderful conversation, and then I found out that I wasn't recording it. So I turned on and you know what? I discovered that when you rewrite something, it actually turns out even better. So.
Yeah. So I think the second time was for us, right?
They were just a practice. how you've already been a spiritual student for many years. This is not something you jumped into all of a sudden, but you did experience some heartbreak. And how did that heartbreak, how did it sort of, did it make you a deeper spiritual person? How did it have an impact on you and your spirituality? Could you explain what happened and what caused that, and how did you heal it?
Yeah, so, being a spiritual person, it's also a journey for us in this human life form that we're in
Hmm.
at this time on Earth,
Hmm.
because we're living in such a polarized, dual world. So it just has this challenges. So at times we can all go through some dark night of the souls. And I've had, multiple, even in my spiritual life, as, growing up as I was little in it. And my biggest dark night of the soul was when I went through my divorce, because it was like this boiling point, I would say.
Hmm.
And it's like this epitome of everything coming together. And it made me realize, when I look back at all my like romantic relationships, I was like, none of them really worked. I just realized that I've
Mm.
been actually, and I became very
That's
consciously
profound.
aware. I became so consciously aware. It's like, oh, I see a pattern here, you know?
Yeah.
And so when I saw that pattern, it's like, I don't want this pattern anymore. And so
Hmm.
I was so determined that I said, I'm going to dig so deep into every part of my karmic pattern, from my past lives and even my ancestrals, and I want to break all of them, and I want to start shifting them. I want to work on myself. So I was really digging inside of myself, even as painful as it was, because confronting yourself is one of the biggest things. You talk about pride, you talk about your own ego,
Right, right.
and all
Pride and
those
ego,
things.
that's a
So
big one.
so I'm like, so I had to like face all that in myself, saying, well, I'm like, this spiritual person also, but I don't understand why, I'm going through all this. But then I had to like really, face myself and say that, this is the truth. And this is, an awareness that I now have to really start to surrender to this energy of this higher life force. And so the more that I started to shift a lot of those patterns, I started to get a lot more clarity and what my actual higher calling was of my divine mission on this earth, and started to remember that. And that's when the light language also got activated, because I
Mm.
was surrendering more to my I am source and energy of my own higher self, and
Mm.
just starting to transmute that ego, the dark ego, into aligning more with my higher self. So it's becoming like this alchemical wedding that was happening
Mm.
inside of me, that was going much deeper and deeper. It's like I was going through this alchemist process. If you know the
Yeah,
alchemy,
yeah.
the alchemy process, right? Where you
Hmm.
go through the shifting of the
And
putrefaction of the, and then what rises, everything turns into ashes. I don't remember like all the terminologies they use in the
there's
alchemy.
a, and when you talk about the step by step process,
Yeah.
and back in the day, alchemy, they was turning base metals into gold. That's what they was trying to do
Yes.
with, but some believe that it really wasn't, them trying to transform, transmute base metals into gold.
Yes.
They were trying to turn their lower thoughts into higher thoughts and
Yes.
transform their hearts and their consciousness.
Yes.
So when we say alchemy or
Hmm.
alchemy, we're talking about
Hmm.
that process that's involved of moving from one state of being to a higher
Yes.
state of being.
I love that. Yes, that's exactly right. I love how you just described it. And that's exactly what it is. And it's like finding your own philosopher's stone, right?
Yeah.
And that is the inner core of your entire being. When you start to tap into that, that's where you get your clarity. That is where you get your trust. So any of those doubts that you're having turn into trust, and then anything that may feel out of balance starts to rebalance itself, and things just start to like fall into place and fall in line.
Hmm.
So then that's when you start to get into this whole spiritual alchemical wedding, as they will call it.
Yeah, the alchemical wedding. Yes.
Yeah, and I love, the images that I remember seeing with in mysticism, they have so
Mm-hmm.
much of these images of the
Mm-hmm.
different alchemical stages.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is, this aspect that we are resurrected, in other words. So I felt like resurrected is the best way
Mm-hmm.
to describe it. When
So
I went
so
through that heartbreak, I went through a resurrection. It's
so
to
what so
summarize it.
basically what that heartbreak did for you, that relationship, that marriage ending, it was, and I could have a whole conversation about the dark night of the soul that we have to
Yeah,
come back, and
me too.
that has to be a,
We have to.
we have to, because I went through that for 7-8 years,
We
you
have to
know.
have another conversation about
Yes,
this.
because that was, I mean, I wish we would have talked about that earlier, because I would have just, hopped on that, because the
Yes.
dark night of the soul, everyone at some point in your life, you live long enough, you're going to go through the dark night of the soul, where, what usually happens is you can come on the other side worse or come out on the other side better. And I stopped judging the circumstances behind that
Yes.
process, because in your case it was your marriage coming to an end. In my case, it was me moving away from a career where I had to start looking at what my values were, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and also there's been relationships, that have ended where that was also a dark night of the soul. And for me, it hasn't happened once, it's happened more than once,
Mm-hmm.
because especially for spiritual people, it comes very frequently, but
Yes.
but we know that this is a part of the process, the alchemical process that we have to go through, the chemical wedding that we have to go through over and over again in order to get our consciousness and our hearts to evolve to higher states of beingness.
Yes.
So when you say that, my marriage took that marriage ending made me go through the dark night of the soul, and I had to use my spiritual knowledge, my spiritual tools, which deepens those your toolbox as well.
You sharpen
And
the
it,
tools.
sh- it sharpens those tools, and to get to the other side, to be a better spiritual person, to be a better human,
Mm-hmm.
to see yourself in ways that you never saw yourself before, I think is an amazing thing. And that's what I'm hearing you say when you're saying that, look, this really turned my life upside down and made me look at myself in a very different way. And
Yes.
because of it, it made me an even deeper, sharper person. And again, like you said, your spiritual tools are even sharper than they were before.
Yes. Yes. And it is a huge shift in perception and in so many other areas, of our being, and
Hmm.
learning how to navigate more, being more consciously aware,
Hmm.
and awake too, because it's
Hmm.
also, every dark night of the soul, I see it as being a turning point in our life.
Yeah.
And it is a form of awakening process also.
Yes.
And because
Yes.
we can go into different levels of awakening, we're always expanding because we're always growing and learning by
Hmm.
something in our human lifetimes. And that's why we're here. This is all a school. This whole
Yeah.
a place of us
Yes.
being here on earth is a school of learning
Yes. This is the
of,
Earth School, and it's an advanced class. It's an advanced
yes.
class.
I would say those who are here on earth are advanced, and we're all here to learn advanced
Yeah.
things,
Yeah, I think, when I was looking at one of your videos, and you was talking about us making these karmic agreements before we even show up in this physical experience. We agree to these heartbreaks, we agree to these lessons, and even the difficult lessons, the hard lessons, we agree to them before we ever become reincarnated into this life. And most people don't really know that, understand that, especially in the West. And sometimes I think because we forget that, we go, why me, why me, why is this happening to me? I'm a good person, why is this happening to me?
Yes.
And I try to, when people tell me that, I say, you gotta be able to, if I were to say to them, hey, you agreed to all of this, they would think, okay, that's not very compassionate.
Yes.
But so I don't go start, I don't start there. But
Yeah, it's not a good way to start a conversation.
nah, well, you agreed to it, like, okay, you know. So I would start there, but I do say, that I stopped judging the circumstances around what has caused me to get to a greater level of understanding.
Yes.
It may be a failed relationship. It may be my career isn't working out. Maybe my health is not where it needs to be.
Yeah.
These are situations that are coming up for you in order to make your spiritual life stronger. And that is
Yes.
the purpose of the dark night of the soul.
Yes, and I love that you said that you stop judging, because that's really the key when it comes to kindness
Hmm.
and understanding, and that's part of the compassion. When the heart begins to expand even more based on lessons of human lifetimes and healing and working on patterns and all that, the heart will expand so much that it turns into this compassion,
Mm.
and it just has this really deep understanding and kindness for others for what they're going through, because in a way you also everybody serves as a reflection, right?
Yeah.
What somebody else may be going through a pain may be something that you may have gone through some past life
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah.
Or somebody is acting out of line with something that they're doing may have been something that we had done in a past life as well.
Law of attraction.
Yeah, law of attraction, and as hard as it would sound for somebody, when they hear that a lot of the stuff that we're doing is also based on soul agreements and soul contracts, and
Hmm.
all this, whether it's a karmic rebalance, because that's really what we're doing, is balancing the karmas from past lives.
Hmm.
And karma, I could talk about it for a while. It's like, it's not necessarily negative, it's also
Hmm. Yeah.
positive karma, but it's actually really
Hmm.
neutral. Karma is
Hmm.
neutral,
Hmm.
and it's just a matter of balancing. So if something is out of balance, it will have to be rebalanced in a way. And so before coming or incarnating into life, we agree to evaluate that karma and bring a balance to it in that
Hmm.
lifetime that we
Hmm.
choose. And we also agree with certain people that come in this lifetime that we will have certain karmas with them as well for
Yeah.
rebalance.
We choose our mom, we choose our dads.
Yes.
And, especially when you're mad at them, you're like,
Yes.
"Nah, I chose
Yeah.
these people, these family. Why? You know,
Right. Yes.
but,
And I mean,
go ahead.
yeah. So I mean, a lot of this stuff is chosen at the soul level, right? This is
Hmm.
without the ego.
Hmm.
And so, of course, like
Yeah.
when we're in our human body, we have the ego also.
Hmm.
And so the ego is like, I don't understand why we picked this,
Pick this person.
situation.
Like, why did I marry you? Or no, what did my soul had to learn to put up with this?
Right,
So,
right.
so yeah, it's something that we have to learn as something that needs to be a part of our everyday vocabulary, is that when things are happening to us that are great, we pat ourselves on the back and say great job, and then when things happen to us that are bad, we pat ourselves on the back and say great job. you know because both are there to make us more spiritual, balanced people. you know
Mhm.
so for you, what spiritual principles that you had to sharpen the most in your spiritual
Oh,
toolbox
I
to
love this
get through,
question.
yeah, to get through that painful divorce?
Oh, definitely my intuition
Mm.
and being able to discern exactly between the ego and the intuition. So that part, was more sharpened. It's a discernment with the
Discernment.
intuition of, working a lot with the heart. And I do a lot of messaging on the heart because that is where I started. That is
Mm.
where I did all my healing, was in the heart. And that's where it's been expanding tremendously. And so that's the area that I focus on when it comes to what is it that I'm receiving intuitively. So that's something that I become, as more I practice it, the more I start to feel that it is my intuition. And so it's trusting it more, So
Yeah.
that's really the sharpening piece of it, is to trust it, and go with it.
Yeah, for me too, that's something that I had to learn too, was to trust my intuition. If I would have trusted my intuition more, and now I just do. My intuition said this is the way it is. It's the way that it is.
Hmm.
And sometimes I used to go, oh, this doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say feel right, but it didn't sound right.
Yeah.
It didn't make logical sense, or it didn't
Yes.
put money in my pocket. Like, oh, that don't sound right because that's the lower salary. And then you get there, you're
Right.
like, oh, this is the reason why my intuition was telling me not to accept. So I learned that when
That's
my
exactly
intuition
right.
tells me no, that's not where you want to go. And even though it makes no logical sense, I can't explain it. And I don't have the words to explain it. Or someone's asked me, well, why do you feel this way? I'm like, I don't know. My intuition says this is what I should do, and I'm doing it. I don't have to explain to you. I don't even have to understand what it is. I just know. And then it always happens. Maybe it takes months, weeks, days, years, but it showed me, oh, this is the reason why I was being told to move this way and make this decision.
Yeah.
But it took me going through, bumping my head. It took me falling down for me to start going, I gotta really start trusting my intuition if I want to stop bumping my head and falling on the ground.
Yeah, no, I am with you on that, because exactly what happened to me when I had the ultimate dark night of the soul, after the divorce, that I was, getting these messages. A healer, that's my higher calling, is to step into this healing, healer role, this quantum energy healer. And I said, but that's not what I studied.
Right.
My other aspect of the human analytical mind was, but that wasn't my study or my education. And
Hmm.
I don't know if that I want to be that.
Right.
And so, but I was being there guided, because that's what they do. That's what your guides do, is to put you back on the path that your soul
Hmm.
agreement contract
Hmm.
was, that you signed up to before you incarnated into this life.
Right.
And so I, was feeling this path, that it was like telling me to go in this direction, and that I was going to be bringing in these new energy codes to this earth. I was like, no, that can't be me.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And sure enough, because that's one of the things that I really had to sharpen my tool, and I asked for other external help from other channelers who had been channelers for many, many years.
Hmm.
And I asked them, well, let me see what they say. They don't know anything about me, so let's see if they pick up on something, right? So it's
Hmm.
kind of like testing it. And of course, they said exactly the same thing that my guy said, without me having to say anything to them. I
Hmm.
said, okay, so maybe
It confirmed it for
maybe
you.
yes, it confirmed this. I'm like, okay,
And the
let me
same thing.
really work on myself,
I have
and
a
trust
story
this.
about that though. I had a story. I was in my mother's house, just watching TV. This is like maybe 15, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. This at home at my mother's house, chilling, watching TV, minding my own business. And my aunt was visiting, and she was going to church that night. And my aunt told me she's going to be in the bathroom. Someone's coming to pick her up. Once she get here, just tell her, she'll be out in a moment. So a woman came to the door and said, I'm here to pick up your aunt. I'm like, well, she'll be here in a moment. She's just in the bathroom. She'll be out. And the woman said, can I tell you something? So she said to me, the woman that was waiting at the door. I'm like, oh, what she got to tell me? She said, there's a calling on your life. There's a
Oh,
calling on your life, and people are waiting for you, well, waiting on
I
you.
love that.
And I went, okay, that's nice. They're waiting on me, you know. And so she said, well, just read this scripture, that scripture, and everything. And my mother was waiting. It was in the kitchen listening to what she was saying. And I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Now, why did I tell her to come inside? Why didn't she could have waited outside. And
Yeah.
so and then I had the same experience some years later. I was at a stoplight. I had just quit my job. I had told myself, I'm done with this. I'm not going to put up with this. I don't care how much you pay me. I'm not putting up with this crap. So I'm driving, home. I'm upset, and at the stoplight, on the highway, at a stoplight, a lady roads, points at me, and she's trying to, get me to roll my window down. And I'm like, what does she want? And I rolled my window down. She says, "Can I tell you something?" I'm like,
That's how it
what?
starts.
There's, it's a calling on you, and there are people waiting for you. I'm like, okay, all right, thank you.
You're getting the message through different channels, right? Like,
Right, and so it was like, and then so I've been getting this message over and over again from people telling me, there's a calling on your life, and people wait. So I started
oh, I
to
love
take
that.
it seriously at some point, through the dark night of the soul, start taking it
Yes.
seriously, because
Hmm.
especially when you're falling down and bumping your head, and you're sticking to things that necessarily doesn't, like you said, you have a degree in something that you wanted to pursue. I have a degree in business, and I'm like, I have my idea about who I want to be in the world, and when it doesn't fit who you are spiritually, then you're gonna have a situation on your hands where
Yes.
you're going to get some bumps out of the head until you say, you know what, I have to start honoring this soul agreement that's, I made obviously before this incarnation, or
Exactly right.
that my higher self is wanting me to pursue. And I just surrendered myself to. I said, you know what, whenever you want me to do,
Yes.
I'll just do it. Let me
That's
know.
exactly what happened to me as
Right.
well. After like maybe the third person confirming it, I was like, okay, I got the message now. It's coming in, same message, but different channels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
really what the channelers are. You have different channels, kind of like a YouTube channel, where you tune into
Mm-hmm.
these different channels of
Mm-hmm.
information, and you have, similar people saying the same thing, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
and so that's really how it is. And at some point I said, I surrender to this, to what
Mm-hmm.
is, if this isn't
Mm-hmm.
my soul calling, my soul agreement,
Mm-hmm.
then it is
Mm-hmm.
so, and I, started making my decrees and my, stepping forward with it and accepting it, that
Mm-hmm.
is my role. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm at right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I'm here on different podcast show and talking with stories, and I've been just having a blast, so I had to like
Yeah.
overcome a lot of things of myself, like my own
Right.
stage fright, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely, for me, I am an introvert, which just means that I like to recharge alone, or with as few people as possible. And, people think, well, that's kind of, the opposite of what you're doing. But it does take me that moment of self-analysis, and then, time alone to really have something of value to share, so, not saying that, people who are extroverts don't, but I'm just saying that I I was fine on the path that I thought was cool for me.
Yes,
I didn't feel like,
exactly.
I thought spirituality was something that was fun. I enjoyed learning about it, reading about it. It was just fun. But I never thought that it would be something that I have to take so seriously, where I'm like, okay, how is this going to pay for my life? That's when it gets
Yes.
like, uh-oh, how is this going to pay for my life? How am me discussing, what we're discussing right now is going to put money in my pocket, you
That
know?
was my exact case also, because that I thought, well, I'm not educated in this. I'm not a Reiki practitioner, for example,
Hmm. Hmm.
So I was questioning all these things and going through all these doubts, and then I had to like really work on certain like money blocks in relation to being a spiritual healer. Because the thing is that, from these many past lives that I've had, many spiritual people suffer from this also with money blocks, is that, light workers themselves, is because of the many of celibacy, of all these vows of poverty from past lives,
Yeah.
where people tend to associate spirituality with poverty, you
Hmm.
know And so I found that it's in many like light workers and spiritual people like us, and many of the people who are listening to your podcast show, that falters is, problem.
Yeah.
And it is something that I really wanted to break inside of me, and I've been breaking, itself.
Hmm.
So when I started my business last year, that was like a huge breakthrough for me, to actually have like my first, clients, which I don't actually really call them clients anymore. I call them like my initiates, because
Yeah.
that's really where it's all like leading is to be initiated into the Sacred Heart. And so that's something that is so key to like what I'm seeing with the patterns in that is that when our soul calls to us to our work, the other
Hmm.
thing is to know that the universe has your back. And
Yeah, the
I
universe
firmly
has your
believe that.
back. Because that's the thing that I had to surrender to was the universe doesn't give you a mission and a cause without the backing. You know, Jesus got your back. God has your back. So if there, and so I had to surrender that because it's always going back to, this isn't logical. And this doesn't, this isn't A, B, C, D, what this, and being able to surrender and say, you know what, I don't know how this is going to work. I just know that this has been called for me to do. And you know what? Everything just fell into place. It just seemed
Yeah.
like every step, just like when soon as I got to like how you're walking on there's a puddle or there's a stream, and you're like stepping on the little pebbles or rocks trying to get to the next other side. And what I learned about life is that you will see the next stone once your feet hits the one that's in front of you. Once the
Yes. Oh, I
and
love that.
Yeah, and so I remember that once I put my foot on one stone, then once I do that, the next stone will be revealed. You're not going to see all of them to get to the side. You're not. You're going to have to step forward, and then once you step forward and move,
Mm-hmm.
then the other stone will be revealed. So once I understood that, it gave me that my anxiety stopped. The anxiety about
Ah,
who's going to pay for this, how it's going to get paid for, how
yeah.
I'm going to get the book done, how the money just showed up. I remember I was trying to get my book done, and I saw how much they wanted me to get my first book done. And I could not sleep without thinking about getting it done. At this point, I was at a
Mm,
place where I couldn't even get any rest until I got started on this. And then I found a company that was going to help me, and they wanted some nice money to get it done. And I knew that
yeah.
they could help me. And then,
Wow.
actually the following month, I had the money. It just showed up out of nowhere.
That
You
is
know,
amazing. I love
it's
that.
and yeah, and in
That's exactly right.
every step just showed up. And I kept saying, where's the money gonna come from? Where's the money gonna come from? I'm not gonna pay for this out of my salary. Oh, and it was, and none of it did. None of it came out of my
Yeah.
salary. It was all just
Wow.
showing up as I moved forward to the next stone, to the next stone, to the next stone.
I love
So
that.
it opened my eyes to see that there are some greater possibilities that I just am not aware. Is not My logic is not going to cause to work. You know, you're gonna, and then there have been times where I just had to just sit tight. Like I'm like you just like my intuition was saying, don't worry, just sit tight. It's
Mm,
all taken care of. And I'm like, and I'm not used to that. It's like I have to be like busy. I have to find
active.
something to do. I'm supposed to be, like, no, just I got you. Just sit tight. And I had to learn how to do that. And what I
Yes, I
learned
love that.
through that is people just showed up. Just showed up. And so
Hmm.
that was completely shocking to me. You
Yes,
know.
it's a surrendering energy. You just like let it be, just trust
Hmm.
the intuition.
Hmm.
And that's how you sharpen it. That's how you sharpen your toolbox of your
Yeah.
tools, which is the intuition. And the
Hmm.
intuition is one of the most powerful tools in that toolbox.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm strengthening that, and I'm getting better at trusting. my intuition, and it's a process because, as you were saying
Mm-hmm.
earlier about sharpening your tools, and we think about sharpening tools with iron, like iron sharpens iron, but the truth is that um, our minds is like iron in a way
Yes.
that it can sharpen um the our spiritual tools. It doesn't require us going through brute force to sharpen our spiritual tools. Something like surrendering is sharpens our spiritual tools. Letting go, releasing, trusting. These are the irons that sharpens our spiritual tools. But we don't think about that in that way. We think about
Mm-hmm.
grinding things. We gotta, knock our head against a wall. Something has to be moving,
Yes.
I have to be sweating in order for for these things to happen, and it's not the case. So it took
Yeah,
me
that's
a
exactly
while
right.
to get that. So
Yes, I love that.
what's your definition between spirituality and religion?
So spirituality is in all of us. To me, it's all about energy and working with the different frequencies of the universe and its energies, the vibration. We're always surrounded by all different forms of sound, right? Through music, through just talking to somebody. All of that, has some aspect of spirituality in it. Being, connected to our I am source of our being.
Mm-hmm.
And religion to me is more man-made. It's in a
Mm-hmm.
way dogmatic, that is pretty constrained to certain rules
Mm-hmm.
of, being. And I feel like, in some ways, some of the religions have been corrupted through time.
Yeah.
And so there may be like a reset point for it at some point. Where it aligns more with the being of a spiritual nature, because it just seems to be more divided. There's some people that say that my religion is better than yours, and there's been many
Yeah.
wars because of that,
Mm-hmm.
where they say that, this is the way of my God. So they separate, that each religion has their own separate God, when it's really all about the unity consciousness, the Christ consciousness that we already carry in us.
Right.
And that is the underlying of the spirituality, you know, of all things. So like
Mm-hmm.
when somebody says they're religious doesn't necessarily mean they're spiritual.
Yeah, you know what? That
To me,
is
two differences.
very true. That is very true.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that I agree with everything you just said about what spirituality means to me and what religion means to me. I definitely am very clear about the differences in the two. Some people do have a problem, like because I remember I was telling someone, I said I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, and they were like, "What's the difference?" And I'm like, well, one is someone is telling you how to get into heaven,
Yeah.
and the other one for me is I have to figure it out myself. I have to figure out
Yes.
how I'm going to get into this heaven, if there's such a thing. And I don't believe there is a map. I believe that we
Hmm.
have to just sort of, through us having this human experience or experiences, we get there. You want to call it heaven, nirvana, you want to call
Hmm.
it
And
self-actualization. There are different words for it, but that's what we're all
yeah,
trying to get
enlightenment.
to. Enlightenment, whatever
Yeah,
we're
and
trying to call it.
the map is inside in our most inner
The
deepest
map is
heart.
inside.
It's
Yes.
that's why I say, that I say the heart GPS, because our heart is really our
Mm,
GPS
yeah.
and our guidance, that we are, and our spiritual guides also connect with us through our heart. And
Hmm.
so that's where I focus it the most. And so
Hmm.
that is, your GPS and your
Yeah.
path, in the path
Yeah.
that you're meant to be on based on your soul agreement and what you come to do here on this earth. So
Hmm. 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 So what does the God of your heart means? What does that phrase mean? And we both know what it means, for us. But for those
Yes.
individuals out there who are hearing that expression for the first time, the God of your heart.
Yeah, so we are gods ourselves, connected, interconnected to the heart itself.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say that we're gods, that means that we are a creative force. It's easy to fall into this victim pattern as to why all these things are happening to me rather than just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tuning
Mm-hmm.
into the heart and saying, okay, where is this all leading to? And why am I, what is it that I need to learn from this experience that I need to break free from? That's looking at it from a creative force, right? And so the God of my heart, the God within, that is your most deepest inner voice of your I am presence, your higher self. It has like have many names to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really like your own wisdom that I say love wisdom, it's like the heart wisdom of your being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what is your definition of the soul?
So to me, the soul is all energy. And
Mm-hmm.
it has
Mm-hmm.
its own frequency and its own signature, and it just is of pure energy itself, which means that with that purity of its energy, it's pure love.
Mm-hmm.
And what gets buried in it is our emotions, and our human experience tends to block that connection
Mm-hmm.
to our soul. And so
Mm-hmm. What is your
yes.
definition of the master within?
So I would say it's similar to the God of your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
the master within is really you and your higher aspect of yourself, because each one of us has an ascended aspect too, which is our higher self.
Yeah, the higher
And that
aspect
higher,
of yourself. Yeah.
yeah, and the higher self of us is really already a master,
Mm-hmm.
because like it's a soul from that has evolved through so many like experiences of human lifetimes from this earth, but also from the different star systems. And when we incarnate into different bodies, we fall into this veil, right? A veil of like forgetfulness, and we fall
Yeah.
into this trap of illusion, thinking that
Mm-hmm.
this world is our reality, but this
Mm-hmm.
is just a world
And
of
that we're
experience.
separate, and that we're separate,
Yeah,
and we're not separate.
no, we're not. And we never
Mm-hmm.
were. And so the minute that you start to wake up into that is when you start to expand your consciousness and
Mm-hmm.
connect more with your higher self and your, master within.
Yeah.
And which is also another form of saying our intuition, and trusting that, because that is also part of your own guidance,
Mm-hmm. That master
inside of you.
within. And I call it the
Yes.
intuition. I call it my intuition.
Mhm.
Is in tapping into that, and how do we awaken that master within?
By doing the things that we were talking about with the intuition and
Mm-hmm.
surrendering to it,
Mm-hmm.
and just tapping into what I like to say, starting with the heart and tapping into that deep
Mm-hmm.
inner voice, which is the most silent and quiet type voice, and most
Mm-hmm.
gentle compared to like the ego and stuff. The ego tends to get really loud
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
aggressive, the dark side of it. So
One of the things that know that because we're members of AMORC, the ancient and mystical order of Rosicrucians, and if you are a member, I'm quite sure you've been a part of a. We have this. Uh, I wouldn't call it a ritual, but it's more so like a. We kind of get together in a group, and one of the questions in that group is how to awaken the master within, and
mm,
that question is answered, and the answer we say in that is to know thyself, because it's stamped on the temple of Defi. I think that's what
mhm.
and someone actually says, well, how do you know thyself? And it's trusting the master. So it's sort of like trust the master within. So it's all sort of connected. Trusting the master within, knowing thyself, and to know thyself, you got to do what? Trust the master within. So that is to me the pivotal of what I had to learn and what we're all learning.
Mhm.
I don't think you never
Yeah, you're
fully
always
come into
learning.
that. We're always learning how to trust the
Hmm.
master within. And in order to trust the master within, we have to know ourselves. How do we know ourselves? By trusting the master within. So it's a little bit
Yeah,
of a
well,
conundrum.
the way I see it is like in the Dark Night of the Soul, for example, you get to know a lot of yourself.
Hmm.
And so because
Yeah.
you're confronting yourself, you're confronting your own fears, you're confronting your other aspects of your ego, because the shadow and the light are also a part of you, being in this like human aspect and learning how to balance those two. And that's how you start to like learn about yourself as well. And the more that you start to learn about yourself and get clarity in that is when you start to also trust, your intuitions and start to discern that. And
Discern.
then
I love that word.
you start to surrender, to what is.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
when you start to realize that, that is how you build on the master within yourself as well.
Yeah.
So definitely, yes, know thyself is such an ancient, unlocking code that,
Yeah.
comes from ancient Egypt, but it actually
Mm.
spans way back to Lemuria, that so many people, and
Mm.
and then from Lemuria, from the stars, not so many people
Mm.
like realize that, but there's a lot of stuff that come from our star family. You
Hmm.
may call them, these other beings who we are a part of as well, but a lot of that was forgotten because of the veil that we are, under. But
Hmm.
that veil itself right now, because of the ascension and the way the energies are going, is getting thinner, which means that a lot of people are starting to wake up, and to wake up
Hmm.
and remember and realize like, oh, I am a cosmic being, I am a star seed,
Hmm.
I am this, light worker that comes to do this, higher divine mission and this calling here on this earth. And
Hmm.
all these people are waiting for me, like.
Yeah, all waiting for me. Like I'm like, where are they? And they're here. They're waiting, and they're waiting for you as
Yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
and I see this. Like I said, when I first met you, I saw this light that was there, and that I can clearly see that light that you have. Many will benefit from it. So yeah, I definitely could clearly see that. So I'm glad that you are aware of it now and have become even more aware, becoming even more aware of it. There's always still
Yeah.
more to become aware of. It's still more to go, more to grow. But it's
Yeah,
just
and thank you so much for saying that. And I mean, I'm just like so glad to be connected with you, and I just admire everything that you're doing, being having your own podcast, having your own book and all the things that you're doing. So I just, felt that instant connection with you,
Mhm.
being in these or nonprofit organization together. So there's a reason why we connected. There's a reason for
Yeah,
the people we know, the
right.
people in our life.
Hmm.
So none of those things about coincidence,
No,
or
there
anything
aren't
like that.
any.
So
Very, very true. So how can our listeners find you and reach out to you?
So the best way to find me is on the different social media platforms, starting at my website, because I have so many links there to Instagram, to my Facebook group, and then also I'm on Clubhouse. So, it's the latest and greatest social media.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so the website is probably the best place to start. There's also my email address on there, and the website is www.sacredheartawakenings with an
Mhm.
S at the end.com.
And I'll leave that
So
in the
that's,
show description, and also how
yes.
to find you on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is grab and listen to Clubhouse, and I really like it. It's some great conversations that are having. It's a different way that they sort
Yeah.
of are communicating. But I definitely like it, and hopefully we can do something, maybe a show or something in the future on Clubhouse. I would love that.
Yeah, you can start your own club on there.
Yeah, you definitely can, but I'm good at conversations,
Hmm.
and I know that when I'm having a conversation with people, it's so much better than me just getting there talking. So I prefer to engage with someone or with others when I'm
Yes.
having when I'm on a platform
I
like that. People are hungry now, or and getting even more hungrier for these
yeah,
conversations about spirituality.
yes,
So
they are.
so I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you and definitely doing something
Same
on
here.
Clubhouse so that we can have these conversations and see who else want to jump in and have questions. Because once you start talking about channeling and light work and all these things, people go, "What is that? What are you doing?" And I think that that's where you're going to come in. When you have a conversation, we're vibing off each other, just having a conversation. Someone's listening in. I'm like, "Oh, what are you guys talking about? What are you guys are doing?" And it gives you a chance to say, well, this is what we're doing, and this is what channeling is, and this
Hmm.
is why, this Lumerian language, and so to me, even I'm going to learn something in that process because I know of channeling, but I never channeled anything before. I'm a free, I call it free writing or channel writing or transcribing. I do that. That's the most that I've done. And
Well, then that's your channeling ability. You could
yeah.
call it something else,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
something that's unique to you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because there's people who actually, I was just watching this YouTube about this one channeler who goes into this trance and she connects with the angels and then she writes down, word for word, the information that she's getting. And then she'll go on YouTube and she'll say, the angels, this message for this week has, to tell us
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
prepare for this or something like that. So yeah, that's, something unique to yourself is where
Yeah.
you channel something, whether that's in writing or in speaking,
Mm-hmm.
you're still channeling and
Mm-hmm.
you can phrase it, you can term it to whatever is unique to yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, I definitely. I'm going to tap into that more. With
Call
my
you the
terminology.
Casey, Edgar Casey.
You know what? That would be that would be astounding. I would like to be awake for that, because he would be asleep, but I just find it just amazing. I saw several documentaries on him and I couldn't get
Yeah, he's
enough.
amazing.
I couldn't get
Yeah,
enough.
but the thing is, like, there's people who channel and they're awake. They remember everything that they channel. And
Yeah,
then there's people who channel and don't remember, like Edgar
yeah.
Casey.
Yeah, like
But everybody's different.
Helen Schuckman, who wrote The Course in Miracles.
Hmm.
She was awake, and there was another person I listened to by the name of Jane Roberts, who channeled a entity named Seth, and I read several of the Seth books. And she could remember most of it, but usually she would go through different phases of it where she could remember, she couldn't remember, depending on how deep she went. But so I definitely have been listening to channeled material, and it's been extremely helpful for me, especially the self books and the Course in Miracles have been great channeled materials that have touched millions of people. So yeah, what we're doing here is been around for a while, but I think people are now at a place where they're ready to really move forward on it in a way that it's a social discussion about it instead of something that people like, what is that, or something that Hollywood is sort of taken and made it into some crazy horror film. you know
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know
God.
yeah, let's not even get started on the Ouija boards and all that stuff.
Oh,
So
no.
you go, no, just stop. This wasn't, meant to be evil, but
Right, right, right.
they have really taken, a lot of the stuff that they're supposed to help humanity move forward. They have taken it
Yeah.
and made it into something that people supposed to be afraid of. You're like, That's not what's,
They distorted. Yeah.
yeah, they distorted it. So,
Hmm.
it's sad. But it's 8:30. I
Yeah.
want to let you go. But I enjoyed the conversation,
Me
and
too.
we will do
This
it
was fun.
again. Yes.
Yay. Can't wait.
I can't wait. Yes. All right. You have a good night, and I will
You
talk to you
too.
soon. Okay, bye.
Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.